we are very fortunate to kick things off. Well, actually, coming back for a revenge visit, no pun intended, is our good friend, Academy Award-nominated production designer Joe Alves, who's done everything from, Jaws, obviously. Jaws, Close Encounters, Sugarland Express, Escape from New York for director John Carpenter. Now showing up, I don't feel tardy. You want to grab yourself a seat and bring it in. Writer-director Carl Gottlieb, the writer of Jaws, Jaws 2, Caveman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously working his own hours around the station lately. But we're happy that you're here nonetheless. Actually, Dave with Chronicle Books is with us. We're going to have him here. And then the man who, the most interesting man in the world this week. Anyway.
Stay thirsty, my friend.
Gunnar Hansen, the how do you like to be introduced these days, knowing that you were obviously part of the rather epic scene that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you're a writer?
Yes.
So how do you prefer? How does the title go?
Gunnar Hansen, immigrant who made good.
Immigrant who made good. Viking immigrant?
Yes.
Yes, Iceland originally, right?
Right.
People don't realize that you are, quite an epic writer, and there's a book coming out in about 4 days. Chronicle Books.
Chainsaw Confidential.
And I understand they're already, looting bookstores for it now to try to get your book early. But why don't you tell us a little bit real quick, kick things off before this conversation spirals into complete movie chaos. Why don't you kick things off with what can people expect if they rush out and pick up the Chainsaw Confidential?
It's about the making of Chainsaw. I interviewed all the surviving cast members and every crew member I could find, and so I got their story. But it's a day-to-day account of the experience of filming Chainsaw, and then from there it talks about how the world reacted to the movie when it came out, how the critics responded, how the public responded, and why it is that critics hated Chainsaw Massacre. The London Times said the less said about Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the better. And then from there it talks about how the perception of the movie has evolved and what its place in horror is.
How does that strike you? You're in demand, I would imagine. I mean, everyone at a convention wants to shake your hand. Can you endorse a signature series? Can you endorse a signature series of meat cleavers and butchery tools? And at the time, it's like it's almost like finally I'm a validation.
Yeah, I'd like to do a McCulloch ad.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't. It's the world is so cryptic in a way now. I'm surprised that you have, at least on Saturday Night Live. I don't know why.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. Well, part of it, I think that after Chainsaw Massacre, I moved to New England and hunkered down and wrote for almost 20 years before I looked up and looked around and realized Chainsaw was big.
Yeah.
And I just had nothing to do with the movie business. So I think that's part of the reason.
Why was that? Was it just because the overall experience was kind of like, screw this, man? Well,
I liked working on Chainsaw, but I did another picture right after that I never got paid for.
Chainsaw 2?
No. I wish. And then
Still in litigation?
I met a couple of movie producers, and no criticism of anyone, but I realized I didn't like these people. Yeah. And I just didn't want to be like them. And I'd also decided that I really wanted to write. That was always what I was intended to do. And I thought if I have to make that choice, I'd rather struggle and do what I have to do. I rode the garbage truck to pay the bills. And I was happy to do that because it allowed me to write. And I didn't want to ride the garbage truck for the chance of being in a movie. And that was the fundamental difference of why I went up there and just stayed out of the business.
That's actually a brilliant. And now let me actually run that by our resident writer, Gottlieb. How do you like? That's pretty well put, don't you think? The garbage truck riding analogy.
Oh yeah. I mean, somebody once described Hollywood as high school with money.
What was Hunter S. Thompson's analogy? It's like a loathsome money pit of doom,
where the best go screaming down the halls. I mean, it's a wonderful quote. It's too long. You have to carry it written down.
I know it is too long, but it's very appropriate.
I'm thinking of carrying it as a card, but no, I empathize completely. There are two kinds of writer. There's compulsive writers who have to write. And then there's writers like me. I'm a deadline writer. If I didn't get paid, I wouldn't write.
Caveman 2, where is it, buddy? That kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, I'd have to work with those producers again. And as Gunnar knows, it's sometimes a limitation. But did you act in the picture also? Or did you?
No, I just wrote it. Yeah, I'm sorry. What am I saying? I wish I'd written it. No, I played Leatherface in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, see, Carl, this is what happens when you're late. You don't get properly introduced because we were trying to give Gunnar the title he actually deserves, not the one he's known by on the street. Because I don't think a lot of people really understand what a high octane writer you actually are. It's kind of you're smiling, but.
Well, thanks.
Let me just tell everyone now. Let me tell the million-plus listeners. Fantastic writer. It's interesting that sometimes I think that's your passion, but everyone's like, "Hey, man, sign this Leatherface mask."
And I'll tell you though, I'm grateful for those fans.
You don't look like a Leatherface. I mean, this is radio, so I have to describe.
No, it's all you guys.
But I do have, as they say, a face for radio, a leather face for radio. Yeah, but I mean, I'm grateful for fans who want to come up and meet me and have me sign autographs.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, like you say.
But, I didn't want to interrupt you, but what you said prior to the show starting in studio here was that you had so much fun doing the movie that it was almost kind of difficult to hear people just kind of be like, like I said, elitist about it,
Well, I want to say something about that. I actually am asked, it's the most common question, was it fun making the movie? And my answer is always no, because it was a great experience, but it was never fun. It was a miserably difficult, exhausting job. But it was, in fact, one of the best experiences of my life. I was fresh out of college, out of grad school. And I'd never been in a situation where everyone I was working with was really good at what they did, and they were really trying hard to do their best. That was very new to me because, no matter, even when you're in grad school, half your friends are slackers.
Can I ask you, I'm just curious, what was your reaction? Hooper shows up, or you meet him and goes, "I got this idea for a movie." I'm thinking, and you're probably thinking like road trip movie, Sugarland Express, or what. Why don't you read this? Tell me what you think. I'd like you to be in it. Or how did that go down, and what was your reaction to all that?
Well, actually, it sort of went the other way because what happened was that I met this guy who said to me, it's too bad. There are these guys in town who are making a horror movie, and you'd be perfect to play the killer. But it's been cast. So I had a pretty good idea. And then I ran into him a week later, and he said, the guy they cast is holed up drunk in a motel and won't come out, and they're now looking again. So I had a pretty good idea that I was playing the heavy. And I never had that thought of, I don't know if I want to do something like this. People ask me that. Wasn't it a psychological burden, to play this? Didn't you have nightmares? But to me, it was just like, well, this would be an interesting job.
Well, yes, make believe. Yeah. I mean, everybody forgets that. I mean, there's this tendency on the part of the public to identify the actor with the character. They call you by the character name, and they're disappointed when you're not Spock or
So you're not a method actor. You didn't stay with the mask on and eat human flesh to really kind of.
Well, you really ought to read the book because there's this whole discussion that I have in the book about the issue of method acting and how people are convinced that I was severely damaged psychologically because I had to become Leatherface. And there was one actor, Paul Partain, who played Franklin, the guy in the wheelchair, who was a method actor. And he would become Franklin, that when he arrived on the set each morning, he would sit in his wheelchair, not get out. He'd shift into his whiny Franklin persona, and he stayed Franklin for the entire period he was in the movie. And we despised him because we didn't know that wasn't Paul. Years later, I met Paul and thought, what a great guy.
I have a friend of mine, a character actor named Larry Hankin, who plays homeless people and winos and crazies.
But you said he was an actor. What does he really do? I mean, all right, go ahead.
He's over the years, he's had experiences where he's worked with a well-known director-producer who shunned him afterwards. When he finished the part, they'd go to the wrap party and they'd thank him, and then he'd run across these people in social worlds. Hollywood's a relatively small town. He'd run into them, and after a while, the producer or director would say, "Oh my God, you're an actor. You're not really an LSD burnout street person." He said, "I thought they just got a guy off of Skid Row and kind of cleaned him up and brought him onto the set." And Larry said, "Well, thank you. I
I
think."
guess. Yes, thank you.
And you kind of live with that persona for a long time, and in some cases, if you're, if you're Captain Kirk, the two blend and you become
Right.
that guy.
What are you saying about Shatner there, Gottlieb? Are you telling me that he walks around as Kirk?
I'm saying he's very important. He's more important to Bill.
Yes, I think
it must be very tempting to fall into that.
Well, of course, and when the world plays along, everybody's happy. Oh, he is like that. That justifies my belief that all actors are their characters.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be amazed at the number of people I meet who are really disappointed that I'm not like Leatherface.
Yeah. Did you tell them that
that's unsettling
if you put
to hear.
the outfit on, you will get properly bloodthirsty and
yes.
crush their bones?
Absolutely.
Well, it's we had talked earlier how when I was over at Warner Brothers, I tried to get Daniel Pearl on a movie. Did you talk to him about this book? Did he?
Oh, yes.
And what did he was really interesting to talk to. Our meeting actually, production-wise, took place over coffee, which is always great because then you really get we're not trying to come together on a job conversation. You get this, hey, can we just kind of click, and almost on a socially. So what did he have to contribute to the book? You want to without giving too much away to the readers?
Well, I think the great thing about interviewing him was, like everyone I interviewed, they really wanted to talk about the movie, and he certainly did. And the best thing was he talked about the technical issues of shooting this movie. He talked about the problems and challenges they had. They shot film because they shot it on 16, and they were really worried about grain. They shot it on the slowest positive color film they could get because they were worried about blowing it up. And as a result, it was basically shot this movie in Kodachrome. And the stories he had about the issues of that,
That's a lot of lighting.
Yes, well, and the problem was he said we had 4 lights. We had 2 5Ks and 1 10K. And he said I thought I'd never used that much light. I thought I could burn down a city with that. That's the way he said it. But of course the problem was, as the production manager said later to me, he said, and you look at the movie at night, every shot is 2 to 3 f-stops underexposed. And he said luckily it worked. But he talked about those technical issues. He talked about how some shots were put together, how he came up with the idea of doing the trackings, the dolly shot, where Pam, who's the one who goes on the hook, gets up from the swing and walks to the house.
Yeah, I love that shot.
That low tracking shot. So he was able to talk about the film at a technical level that I otherwise never could have understood. And that was the great pleasure. Plus he talked about what he liked about the movie and what some of his experiences were.
Funny story, when I met him, he had shot Pathfinder, which was a great premise, but the movie really doesn't deliver, I think, personally. But it looks great. And so when I met him that day, we were talking briefly, and I just turned to him, I go, and so, Pathfinder, like that, and he goes, yeah, what happened, huh? he just like me goes, yeah, what happened? Just so real. But let's go back in time for a minute, okay? You're off in Texas. They say, okay, here's your mask and run around with a chainsaw. Mm-hmm. Okay, no production insurance issue there, right? I'm guessing, right?
Oh, no. And no stunt people.
No stunt people.
Oh, God.
So, and it's night, some of it.
Yes.
So, did you have any? It says a lot about you to be like, all right, let's fire this baby up.
Well, as the woman who was the assistant art director and who doubled as stunt woman for Marilyn Burns, Sally, said to me, when they asked me to jump through a second window, I was so stoned that I said, "It's brilliant." So I just thought, sure, I'll do whatever you want.
So when you said that, when the word stunt woman, when that was mentioned, the Jaws crew here started chuckling.
Well, the combination of stunt woman and art director.
Yeah, that's quite work.
That's a hybridization that
it is creative,
in the studio world that we came from, you didn't see many people who were hyphenates in that way. That's kind of like, I don't know, associate producer, Teamster captain.
Yes. Yeah. How many union rules did that break?
Yeah.
What was the shooting schedule on that?
It was scheduled to shoot for 3 weeks, but very quickly they realized that we shot it in 6. And to get it shot in 6 weeks, we shot 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day.
Now, Toby's an old friend. I knew him in the years after that, when he lived in Austin, and great guy, good director, and much misunderstood because of that movie. He spent the rest of his career, I think, being a good director, and
he is a good director.
And people would say, but you did Texas Chainsaw, you did that film, which is the book.
But there's moments in that film that are, especially shot-wise, in its simplicity, where you're just looking at this going, yikes. Mm-hmm. And that is, to be able to connect that to an audience, that's an art.
But, what we were talking about earlier, about what the critics do to a film as opposed to what the audiences appreciate. And sometimes that critic thing lasts, for the critics, and oh yeah, but he did that. They're not asking the general public and we've obviously seen that with the Jaws movies, Yeah.
I remember not wanting to see Texas Chainsaw being very young, but watching it going, I don't know if it's right for me to really enjoy watching this movie. I was questioning my own sanity, going, I really think this is a good movie to watch. Should I be thinking that way? I mean, what am I crazy?
No,
don't answer it.
But otherwise,
yeah. Of course, you're crazy. We're here.
Yeah, what's that got to do with this conversation?
but as I'm sure Gunnar knows, you do a picture, and at the time you're just doing your job. You're just trying to get through the schedule. Just like as we did, and you don't think about its place in history.
Oh no.
But that movie probably is the first of the torture porn, whatever the genre that they have put on it, whatever the handle is that makes it convenient to understand that film. When you're the first one, you carry that burden, for better or worse. People come up to you and say, I never drive down a lonely country road without thinking of Leatherface.
Yeah.
And they the same way that they
yeah,
tell
they never
Joe
go
and
in
me,
the water
we
without
never,
the
we,
shark.
after that movie, we never went swimming in the ocean. It has this lasting cultural effect that the critics or cineasts, I mean, decent film critics, acknowledge the integration of a film as part of pop culture, and then they re-examine it in the light of everything that's happened. But then there are others who assign it a niche, and for the rest of their lives, their little intellectual lives, that's where that movie lives, and they won't see it in any other way. They won't look at the composition, they won't look at the lighting, they won't look at the acting. They just say, oh yes, torture porn, first one.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And by the way, I love the word cineast.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I use it in the book, and I love the word because it sounds like something else.
Yeah.
So when you sit back and you think about this, and do you ever watch the movie? I mean, do you ever look at it and then, or do you
only when I have a reason to?
Yeah.
While I was writing the book, I watched the movie probably 3 times. I sat down and watched it straight through just to get a feel for it again. And then as I was writing and describing scenes, I would go and scrub shots. I would just go through and look at short sequences to make sure I knew exactly how it was cut together, or what exactly did this character say at that point, because it's not what it says in the script. And so like that. So I probably watched it 3 times just for that. I've probably seen it 20, 25 times.
There's a screening tonight, you were saying?
Yes.
At the Arrow.
At the Arrow.
Oh.
6:30.
You're trying to make the guest list for that, Carl.
Well, I'm just thinking what the rest of my day is like.
Yeah.
I could get you in.
Okay.
You should go, Carl. That'd be great.
The Arrow, that's on the far west side. Maybe.
Have a dinner engagement.
I was going to say.
With the producer of the latest one.
Yeah.
The Chainsaw 3D.
Yeah, that's what you guys were saying, and you were saying this. You met him for drinks last night, and you're having dinner with.
It was so weird because Carl Massacre I met on Jaws 3D, and he was his first job, and he was like a location guy. He was just doing everything.
He was a hyphen. And
he was building this big underwater tank for the shooting there. And
you remind us of him, by the way.
So he's obviously a fantastic individual.
Fantastic guy.
People can't get enough of his company.
Anyway, so last Saturday night at the Egyptian, they had a screening of Jaws 3D. And Carl called me. I hadn't talked to him for a number of years. And he said, and Mr. Gottlieb here forgot or something. I don't know what happened.
You were running late that day, Carl, huh?
I don't know.
I don't know. He didn't show up. But
there.
anyway, Carl's Massacre said, "Come to dinner. Come to my house," because he lives up off the Sunset. He said, "And we'll eat, and then we'll go to the Egyptian." I said, oh, "Great." So we did that, and it had been a while since we had seen each other. But that was his first movie. His second movie, his first movie in this town, was a movie called Starman. John Carpenter. Yeah.
Your guy.
And I introduced him to John, and I got him that job. So he's been very gracious about, you gave me my first job in this town.
Alves with the big connection.
Yeah. So anyway, we had a great time. We went to the Egyptian, and we couldn't believe it. It was sold out. I mean, and at 12, after 12 o'clock, they wanted us to do interviews and stuff, and Rupert Hitchcock was the producer, Carl Massacre, and Carl Gottlieb was supposed to be there.
I'm so sorry.
Anyway, so but they
stayed.
They stayed forever. While we talked and talked. So anyway, we're having dinner, my family, with Carl tonight, and this is so funny that you said that last night. So I'll have to mention that to him.
Why don't you guys go to dinner and then go to the screening? Why don't you guys just make it a big night out?
Yeah. I asked him if he didn't want to come to the screening. He said he was busy.
Yeah.
That's why, because of this guy.
Yeah. This is called coincidence. Coincidence.
Yeah, I couldn't believe
that.
That
Saturday night, the 14th?
The what?
The 14th, was that the night of the screening?
Yeah.
At the Egyptian?
Yeah. What was Carl doing?
Because I see what I was doing, and
I know the lady.
Yeah, and if
we don't want to talk about that.
And she was, but she didn't make it.
Oh.
So I sat down with the new Jack Reacher book and just blanked on everything else.
Well, in 4 days you can sit down with the new Gunnar Hansen book.
Well, we had done this at the Chinese a couple weeks before.
And that was well attended, and the enthusiasts were there.
So it was cool.
Let me ask you guys, you guys have done a lot of time on this show, very gracious of you, but we respect you both enough. You're sitting back, we respect you as some of the better film guys we know. You're sitting back and you look at this piece of art, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for the first time. What goes through your minds when you see that for the first time? Like, what, as a writer and or production designer,
when you when you see a film for the first time, if you're caught up in what's the writing like or what's the design like, then you're not watching the film. You're not experiencing the film.
Yes,
but after
people
you see it.
That.
But after you see it, you go back and you say, wow, that was pretty well done. But the point is, in a well done film like Texas, like the first one, you're watching it, you get drawn into the experience, and then only after you're processing it do you say, wow, that was really a good script, or boy, they really achieved the effects, or or why am I more scared about this one than anything else I've seen?
Yeah.
And that's the fun of it. The fun of it is losing yourself in the experience the first time. So and then and sadly with Texas, it went in. If you went in to see it the first year of release, it was saddled with all this additional baggage of the publicity and the critical disagreements over, is it art, is it porn, is it is it a new direction, what does it say about alcohol, all the arguments you've heard. So you kind of try to put that behind you when you go into the theater and just go, I'm just going to enjoy this as a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's all you can do.
Did you sit back and go, wow, these guys, they did it? Like the Coppola walking out of the French Connection and being like, now I'm doomed on The Godfather. These guys did it. Because, when you see that movie, you're like, wow. I remember even seeing it later in life. I was born in 72, so I probably saw it 80-something, going almost too real in the mood for me. It's just, but so really being riveted by it.
Yeah, no, when you watch these kind of movies, you understand why they've become part of the culture. You go, oh, I get it. It's touching all these different chords that people were unaware of at the time, but the picture, sometimes inadvertently. There are movies that become these, pop culture icons almost, in spite of what the producers and directors, writers had in mind. Showgirls is a perfect example of, a kind of a awful movie, but a lot of, can we say this on the air, tits and ass, and you go to see that, and it's ridiculous, and then you go, well, wait a second, it's actually not a bad look at Las Vegas and that experience.
Carl has a saying: you see a movie, and you think about it, and you go home. This is his the refrigerator concept. And then you get home and you're hungry, and you open up the refrigerator and you say, wait a minute. How did they do that? You
watch the home refrigerator logic. Gary Marshall was, I think, the first one who told me, you enjoy a movie, and then you go, you have some ice cream afterwards, you go home, you think, and then it's not until you go down at midnight and open the refrigerator for a snack, when the refrigerator light comes on, you say, wait a second, if the bomb was in the briefcase, how did he know that?
I remember Barry Levinson taking us aside for a conversation and going, somewhere in A Silence of the Lambs, there was a conversation where the police captain says, okay, most dangerous cannibal killer is coming to our town. We're going to put you, Simpson, Reese, you're going to guard him. The rest of the 40 or 50 SWAT guys, we're going to be down in the lobby. If you have any problem, just yell out. We'll come up right away. And I forgot to tell you, we built this Supermax cage, but we didn't have time to put a food slot in. So you're going to have to go in there to feed him. Just tell him to stand in the corner or something. You'll be fine.
And now online people do these critiques of
terrible.
Movies that, and I was sitting there with Carl Massacre Saturday night, and he has an incredible wine cellar. And I said, I don't drink anymore. He said, well, then you're going to have to smoke this Cuban cigar. I said, oh,
can we
God.
do an interview
so
from
you really
his place?
do know him.
Yes. So I had to puff that cigar. Anyway, he starts reading this thing about JAWS 3D because he said, okay, so Dennis Quaid goes over and pours, his brother a cup of coffee. But the pot has about half full, but the second time it was less than that, and there was somebody is measuring the amount of coffee in the pot of the movie.
Sad commentary.
Must have been a
time.
cineast.
Yes, definitely a cineast, or just the good old geeks and nerds who will watch their favorite movie
and
not 30 times, but 3,000 or 4,000 times, and with Blu-ray or the DVD technology, they'll watch it frame by frame. Okay, I've finished that frame. I'll go on to the next frame.
Unbelievable.
And that doesn't really bother me. You know the line, the great thing about the internet is no one knows you're a dog.
Yes.
What bothers me about online critics isn't that they look at every frame and analyze it. It's because they get snarky because they're anonymous. And so they have the courage to be snarky about it when they would never do that. If we knew who they were and we had to hold them accountable for that.
Or even if you're sitting across a table looking them in the eye like, one human being to another. I mean, the trolls, as they call them, the trolls and the nerds out there. I shouldn't confuse the two, because nerds, I like nerds. It's the trolls I don't like. and the trolls are the ones who, live under the bridge and try to snatch you down and are thoroughly unpleasant.
Live under the bridge.
Haven't you ever crossed the troll bridge?
No, I haven't.
Did you know why you had to pay the troll?
I don't know. I'm afraid to even ask. The way you're looking at me tells me it's an evil concept. So Carl, we're going to his place after the show today to do
did you smoke the cigar?
I had a nice cigar with him last night. And in fact,
Cuban, the small Cubans?
Yeah. And in fact, when we shot Chainsaw 3D, he was gracious and hired me to have a cameo in the film. Every night after shooting, once I signed off as being finished, we sat in a couple of chairs while the crew tore down whatever they needed to tear down, and we'd smoke a Cuban.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know. He had me puffing on that thing, and I haven't smoked for I can't remember when. And unfortunately, though, I gave up drinking because he has the most incredible wine cellar.
Yeah.
And he also crafted all this, all the cabinets himself. It was incredible, and I do a lot of that kind of stuff. But his wine cellar is incredible. And I said, gee, I can't drink the wine. Oh, you got to smoke the cigar then. Okay. Made me a little ill, but it was...
And if the ATF is listening, it's not really a Cuban.
When you talk to him, will you please apologize for me? I really meant to be there.
Oh, well, you would have had a cigar.
He's going to sit down at dinner and be like, Carl, funny thing, I just did a radio show with both Gunnar and Carl Gottlieb. They're going to the screening tonight that you were invited to, but you're not going because you're here here with me. But Gottlieb said he's sorry about the event we did that he missed a week ago. He was late to the radio show this morning as well. But maybe there's a way all of us can get together.
It's a very small world, isn't it? I mean, it's really funny when you get to this stuff.
What I want to know is, where is the Texas Chainsaw Jaws crossover pick? Where is the script for that?
Kill the shark.
Shark saw?
Oh, wait a minute.
Sharknado?
He
Or
didn't.
Leathernado.
Sharknado, didn't he? Sharknado, he went into the shark with the saw, and he sawed himself out of the shark. Did you see? I saw that one cut.
Yeah.
What
I saw
movie
that. I saw that one clip too.
Oh, in Sharknado.
Yeah, he goes into the shark's mouth.
I want to point
and
out.
And he chainsawed himself out.
I want to point out for the record on air that Gottlieb here raves about that movie, Sharknado.
Who does?
This guy, Carl.
I don't.
I said, "Where's the sequel?"
We met
He's like,
the guy.
We met the director. He's a very
The
nice
other
guy.
night.
He was at the Chinese theater screening.
Yeah.
And was very pleasant. And the crowd loved him because he was very current. And we talked about. I guess he's already prepping a sequel.
Of course.
Sure.
Get those chainsaws going.
So this time they land in some remote Texas town.
Ooh. And the only one who can save them is Leatherface.
Yes, the one that everyone is scared about. He now rises up as the hero.
I like this.
See, you like where this is going. See, you're a writer we respect quite a bit. So the fact that you're giving the nod on this tells me we're on to something. We're on to a concept.
That's a superhero. You heard it here first.
Yeah, right.
The next collection of superheroes like the Marvel, like the Avengers, the next collection should be the villains.
Villains Gone Good.
Leatherface, Freddy, they get together and fight evil.
Can you see the fan-made
evil
trailer
fights
on
evil.
that? The
The
re-edit.
Injustice League.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
We had Stanley Kubrick's
they'd have
producer
to
in here
fight
once.
Martians. That's what they would fight the aliens.
We
This
once
could be a series.
we once had Leon Vitali in here who had done a lot of producing with Stanley Kubrick, and I said I found this thing. He got to start on The Shining. And I played like a fan re-edit of Shining, but it was like a happy version. Like, meet Jack. He's a writer.
Oh, I've seen that.
And
That's a very
he
funny
wants to
thing.
connect with kids, and then at the end, it's like it goes to Peter. It's like
pretty frightening.
Peter Gabriel's Mulberry Hill, and he goes Shining. It's like all happy. I could see that like being somebody taking this and putting together like Leatherface does good work. Leatherface and his community service.
Face to face.
Now, you wrote the Jaws log, the production manual surviving that film. You now have your book coming out in 4 days with Chronicle Books. I think we should have a show where we, everyone swaps the literature around here. We check it all out, and we come back and we reconvene on all the interesting production notes, and because both productions have a rambunctious kind of production history, right? I mean, what you guys had to survive. I mean, I heard it was like 120 degrees some days on Texas. Is that true? Or?
Well, it was 100 degrees every day, give or take. But the 26-hour shoot at the end, it was the hottest. Those were the hottest time of the shoot, and it probably was that kind of temperature inside because we shot the dinner scene for 26 hours, and so we covered up the windows. We had all 20K of lights burning in the,
Yikes.
And so if it was 100 degrees outside, it was easily 120 or so inside the house. And, of course, there was no air moving at all.
We used to joke about a cinematographer in television who was, kind of excessively lighting the set. And we said, oh, yeah, Lester's writing a book called Welding with Light.
Welding with light.
Chainsaw was independent, right?
Yes.
Independently financed.
Yes.
And then it was released through...
Bryanston, which was they were based in New York. The Pirano brothers, who we ended up calling the Piranhas, the Pirano brothers were reportedly part of the Colombo crime family.
So you didn't go to them for your residual check, basically. You just said keep it.
Well, when you say to them,
Where's my money?
Where's my money? They go, you don't want to know.
So that was 74, right?
Yes.
It was so different in the studio system. The studio system, where you have a lot of executives that seem to know everything, and they take a lot of credit for Jaws, even though they try to stop it 4 times. And you're constantly in the threat of being shut down. I can remember Zanuck picking up a phone and throwing it against the wall because he was talking to studio executives about Spielberg wasn't getting the shots quick enough or things like that, So there's this pressure. Jaws 2, they fired the first order, and they stopped the movie. I mean, and so there's this huge studio decisions, these brilliant people, that while you're doing this, there's this constant threat of shutdowns on all of them that I was involved with. And then the movie comes out, and they all make hundreds of millions of dollars, and they parade around with like they're so smart, you know.
Yeah, and in the studio big finance system, it is like turning an ocean liner to get it to switch directions or even adjust, mid-course adjustment. You got this 600-ton liner. Takes you 11 miles to stop and 22 miles to make a full turn.
Your own set of problems, because Joe, you were saying earlier this morning that Jaws didn't even have a PO number, and so the effects department was like, well, we're working on the Hindenburg. You'll have to come back to us with your little piranha movie later.
Yeah,
well,
and you couldn't even get production done.
No, absolutely. And as I said, the early sketches I did, Zanuck and Brown didn't have a charge number, so they basically asked me to do it for nothing because they knew I was at the studio working on a television movie, and we were all staff guys then. So you would do this stuff, and they were very successful producers and really nice guys. And so
stingy.
But stingy. Let's make sure we put a footnote.
They had to watch the funds.
But stingy. But I'm curious with you on your production, Gunnar, when you're handing a script like that around for financing and everyone's reading it. I mean, was it like did they use a dummy script, or is it pretty much it's all in there? That's what you're going to be. We're going to have a scene where.
I think so. Kim Henkel told me that they finished the script in probably February, and they were in production. They had the money. We'd gone through pre-production, started shooting in early July, and I think the process was pretty fast. They talked to a guy named Warren Scarron, who ended up writing Beetlejuice and Top Gun, and he at the time was the head of the Texas Film Commission. And he liked this movie, and he put him in touch with a man named Jay Parsley. And Jay was a lobbyist. He was former president of Texas Tech, I think it was. And Jay said he had invested in movies, and Jay said, I'll finance this movie. I need a couple other people to come in with me because I need to know other people believe in it. But the process was pretty fast.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the independent
world.
I
was going to say.
When you have a project that kind of catches, it doesn't even have to be a lot of people, but if there's just enough imaginations that are caught up by the project and see the potential, and because they're made for a price and they can usually return their investment, especially in those days, it's not, you don't have to jump through all the hoops. You just start shooting.
And some of the money came. I was talking to Danny about the movie, Danny Pearl, and he was talking about he got the script and he read the script right away, and he said he was so excited and so chilled by reading the script he wanted to do it. And he called Toby up and said, when did we start shooting? And Toby said, well, we're $10,000 short. We need one more investor. And so Danny says, I had this friend who had a lot of money from nefarious activities, who liked movies. So I called him up. He read the script, and 2 hours later he called me and said, how much can I invest?
Yeah.
And so then I went to Toby's house with a grocery bag full of $10,000 in cash.
Wow.
So that's how they ended up the financing of the movie.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Give me a moment. I'm going to go around the room on this, but give me a moment, starting with you, Gunnar, where the funniest thing that happened that Toby Hooper did while directing Texas Chainsaw, where you're like, am I really standing here witnessing this? Give me one of those.
Oh, I don't think there was ever a moment like that. I mean, there was one moment where the cast started laughing so much it was like they were teenagers again, and Toby finally just walked off the set.
What was the scene you were doing?
Well, yeah, it's the scene at the gas station when they pull up at the gas station and the cook, Jim Cito, comes up to the window and is talking to them. And when he's doing that, there's a guy named Robert Corton was the actor, who was that strange guy sitting at the gas station, and he comes pulling the bucket up with the water and starts washing the windshield with the bucket. And Alan Danziger, who played Jerry, the guy driving the van, accidentally hit the windshield washer. And the wipers went up, the wiper button, and the wipers went up and blasted a load of soapy water into Jim Cito's face. And they had to stop because he had only one costume. And so they had to dry his shirt, get it ironed again, and then put it back on. And he said and they had to clean up his makeup. And they said that and Bill Vale, who played Kirk, the first one to die, he was in the other front seat, and he said that every time then they started to roll the shot again, he and Jerry, or he and Alan started to laugh, and they couldn't get the shot. And Toby, this is the only time I've ever seen that Toby was angry. He just finally said, he used a couple of choice words and walked away. And I wasn't there for that. But that's what they both told me, and that someone else stepped in and
there's a lot of
finished
pressure
the shot. Yeah.
on the director. That's you should always have 3 of everything. I mean, I mean, seriously, someone said I had the original shark gun, from Jaws, the original one that Quinn used.
There's 2 original ones, and both owners are really snarky about whose gun is the real one.
Yeah, but I think there's 3. Any good prop man, any good wardrobe person would have 3 of everything.
But I think you have to have a budget for that.
Exactly.
That's precisely on a major film. That's the rule.
When I went in the water in Jaws, I mean, in the
legendary Meadows death scene.
The Meadows' death scene. I toppled in because I was a secondary character. They didn't have wardrobe doubles for me, even a studio picture. At some point, the wardrobe costume designer or wardrobe manager has to say, I got so much money, I obviously have to double the mayor. I've got to double some of these.
Right.
Meadows' outfit was so atrocious. There's no way we're going to want 2 of these.
With those, with the little sailboat?
Where's the original chainsaw from Texas Chainsaw
Well,
Massacre?
the saw was borrowed. And so when we finished shooting, they gave it back to the owner.
And he had no idea what he had there.
Well, he might have, but at the time, who cared? I mean, I think that was it.
That was before the memorabilia collection.
Yeah. Oh, I know. People, they
have the outfits been surfaced, or has there been a brisk trade in the memorabilia from
the masks have been sold at auction recently in the last few years, and Leatherface's apron sold about 5 years ago at auction.
I can't believe, as strange as this sounds, that there's not some sort of like culinary line based on it, like aprons and cleavers.
Oh
and,
right.
With like the Leatherface picture on the handle or whatever.
On the Food Channel, right?
Yeah, the Food Channel.
Well, I was thinking I was a judge at one of the Food Channel's
which is genius. That was my next question: is how often do they reach out to you for that kind of thing?
That was once, and they did cakes. It was the cake contest, and they were doing Halloween themed cakes, and that was a blast to do.
Is Cake Wars? Was it the Halloween Cake Wars? I probably saw that.
Yeah, it could be.
What you're talking about is incredibly actually exciting and elaborate. These guys do cakes, and they're like sometimes like 4 feet high.
I've flipped past the show. I'm
Don't
aware,
do that
I'm aware
next time,
of it.
Carl. Stay on it. Just give it a chance. And they do get interesting personalities in the mix to discuss it and try it.
Have Leatherface discuss the Halloween cakes? That's what you're paying your associate producer or your casting or booking agent to do. Is who do we get to be on this show to judge the cakes? Well, how about Leatherface? That's a stroke of genius on somebody's part.
Because you guys, I think was it you, Joe, who told me that one of the sharks that didn't work from Jaws, is now hanging in front of a Tahunga wrecking yard?
It's the last remaining authentic shark from Jaws. Is just rusting away, stuck on a pole in an auto salvage yard in Sunland, California.
Yeah, but the truth, really, it wasn't the real shark. It was the real mold. What happened was they took the 3 sharks when we got back, because everybody thought this is a loser movie, and they threw the sharks in the back. Okay, the movie came out, and the tour didn't have anything. So they quickly took and made a fiberglass from the mold. They made a fiberglass shark, and they hung it up, by the tail at the
ride, at the attraction.
Yeah, at the ride, so you could take your picture in front of it. Okay, a few years ago, I got a call from NPR radio show. They wanted to talk to me about this shark at a junkyard. And this is in Washington, D.C. The guy says, I'm flying out from Washington, D.C. I want you to go, verify this shark. It's at a junkyard in down here in Sunland. In Sunland. So the guy came on. I says, okay, I'll get Roy Abergass, who made the mold, and he could verify it. So we went out there, and there's this thing. And Roy looked at it and he says, absolutely, this was made from the mold. So it's just a fiberglass piece of thing, and it's sitting there. It's bigger than a junkyard. It's a huge wrecking yard.
Arbogast has authenticated it.
Yeah. And because he made it, he's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is.
Yeah, but the original sharks were so fragile that they just turned to dust. If they weren't being maintained and dried and hosed and washed and refurbished for the next day
they were
shoot.
constantly, because the salt water was eating everything away. Then we had to remake them for Jaws 2, and then for 3.
Now you directed Jaws 3, Joe, right?
Yeah. Joe was the
Jaws
director.
3D.
Gave Leah Thompson her first job.
Yeah. Cute little. She looks great. I saw her just.
That was a great cast. Lou Gossett, Dennis Quaid,
Yeah.
Leah Thompson.
Wasn't bad. 3D. The new print was really quite good.
Yeah. Are you going up to Washington State for that?
When is that? What is that?
Okay, that's the one you're going to miss. That I'm going to go.
We're getting away from the issues here.
I didn't know about this
Right.
one. We have to talk about it.
It's one thing if you guys are all trying to tread on a producer's time and rating his wine cellar. It's another thing if you're going to get your social calendar straight on the air. Okay.
Well, we want to leave time to come here and do this.
I want you guys
We have
back
to plan
do
our
this.
lives around combat radio.
Good. Well, see, that's what I like to hear, Carl. That's what I like to hear from you. And incidentally, I had that producer that you don't want to work with again on the show, but he talks very highly of you.
Now.
Now, yeah. And anyway.
Good news, if I can announce it.
Please.
On Tuesday, just a few days ago, I was reelected as Secretary-Treasurer of the Writers Guild of America.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. That was wonderful.
A hard-fought campaign, and vote count was in. I won 53% of the vote to 47% and defeated my challenger and won re-election.
And what's good about that is, all the combat radio listeners that stuff the ballot box for you. Our show does pay its dividends, doesn't it? All you listeners who are Writers Guild voters and who voted for me, thank you so much. There you go. Congratulations.
To rephrase a question I get a lot, can you get me into the guild?
Yeah, can you? Are you serious?
You need.
You're joking. You're joking.
No, it's employment based. Peter Benchley didn't know 20 years after Jaws that between Jaws and his other movies, because he did The Deep and The Island after that, he started to have a lot of health issues toward the end of his life, and my wife and I filled him in on the Writers Guild pension and health plan, which he was unaware of. I mean, he had a generous, income from Jaws. I mean, he owned whatever huge percentage of it that the original author has. So he did well, but he was facing, enormous medical bills, which, if you have investments, you don't want to sell to pay for your.
No, right, of course.
Anyway, so I introduced him to the health plan and said, you probably qualify.
Yeah.
And after he investigated, he found he did, and probably close to $1 million in health care costs was picked up by the Guild's health plan. So it does make sense to have that.
Screening tonight at the Arrow for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the book in 4 days. What other exciting events, Dr. Hanson, can you fill us in on?
Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I'm signing at Dark Delicacy. So actually tonight, at the screening, you'll be able to buy a copy of the book.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and then again at Dark Delicacies tomorrow.
Oh, excellent.
Dark Delicacies is great. They are fans.
Yeah.
Are you going tonight, or are you going to Dark Delicacies? If you go to Dark Delicacies tomorrow, I'll go with you. We'll go dropping in on this guy. We'll do a field piece.
What time is it?
It's at 2 o'clock tomorrow. So for you, it's at 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're usually just getting up at that time, though, right, Carl?
Well, 2 o'clock. Yeah, I've had breakfast by then.
But you should go to the screening tonight, I would think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I could probably arrange to get a copy.
Yeah. No, I'm not. That would be great. No, I'll see you. I'll probably see you at the screening, man. I'll probably go to that.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be good. And you're going to be having dinner with some big shot producer, but he obviously booked Gunnar in ahead of you on the social schedule. You're going to have to bring that up to the calendar. You've got some production work. As many people know, as I said at the top of the show, every year we do a Christmas breakfast for homeless kids. And one of the coolest things about it is the contributors who get involved and do something for the silent auction, and which is really how these children make money. The food bank at the local church, the Lutheran Social Services, is empty almost year-round. But, Joe, you were very great. Carl, you've repeatedly done stuff for us and signed Jaws posters, and I'm going to hit you up, of course, before the event. But, Joe, you walked in with some very cool storyboards from the movie itself and some concept art.
Yes.
And we opened it up, and you were telling me a little bit about it, and it was getting to be such a good conversation. I said, hold it till we're on the air. And Gunnar, how are you doing on time? You got a few
Oh,
minutes?
I'm fine. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So why don't you go through us and show the room what you got? I mean, let's see what the. Am I putting you on the spot? Is it like a teacher telling you to?
No, I'm going to show you this stuff. And okay, as I was saying before, Richard Zanuck, David Brown. Worked with them, got to know them on Sugarland Express, and they bought this book called Jaws, and they had the galley sheets, and they had a feeling that it might be a hard sell to the studio. I mean, they'd come off to Sting, MacArthur, Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid, they did at Fox, so they were A-list producers. But a movie about a shark, They called me and asked me if I could do some concept sketches based on the book to show the studio and the effects department what the activity of the shark. This is interesting because Richard Ellis is a well-known illustrator of books and stuff on Sea Life. He had a show in Florida, and I ran into him. And he was a good friend of David Brown's in that sort of social circle. And he said, I thought I was going to design it. Jaws, and but Dick Zanuck, being a more practical guy, said, well, Joe's at the studio, Joe's working at the studio, we'll get him to do it for nothing because he's a staff guy, he's probably working on a television movie, and besides, that way it's an inside thing, and I told Richard that because Richard is an incredible illustrator. So anyway, I did 25 of these. Different. They look more like Moby Dick. I have him throwing the harpoon, and little boy getting eaten. So, all this stuff. This was the T-shirt, shark's mouth. And somebody's selling these online.
I know.
I don't know. Not with my signature. I had a. Well, Carl and I do these shows, Monster Palooza and stuff. This one girl, I was signing stuff. She says, "Can you draw a shark on my arm?" And yes, I could do that. Anyway, get back to the story. The studio system, everything was done in-house. You didn't go to ILM for effects. You went to the effects department at Universal. The camera department, editing, sound, all that was in-house. And very seldom would you go outside of that. So Stephen hadn't been on this movie yet. They had another director in mind, but he thought he didn't know the difference between a shark and a whale.
He kept referring to the shark as a whale.
But anyway, the talk was that maybe Stephen might do it, and I would go over and talk to him about this and show him what I was doing. So I think he's finally signed when we had this meeting of all the departments, every major department, art, effects and stuff. And I went through this big spiel of showing them and expressing the shark does this and that. And so the effects department said, well, that would take a year and a half, 2 years to make it. And besides, we just did Earthquake, and we got the Hindenburg, and
Airport 75.
Big movies like that. And Marshall Green, who is really the savior of this movie, he was the head of production, very smart guy who had been the assistant director on Spartacus and stuff. So he knew movies. He got upset, and he pounded his desk, and he said Jaws could be a bigger movie than the Hindenburg. And the people sort of chuckled. And anyway, they all left, and I was cleaning up, picking up my drawings, and he calls me back. He said, could you get the shark made? Yeah, sure. Why not?
Easily.
He says, well, take it.
Easily.
Take take it out of the studio, find somebody, and build it someplace else. And then I looked around, and I finally found Bob Matty, who was a retired effects guy who did the giant squib from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and we collected 6, I call them Magnificent Seven, 6 guys were Albergast because he knew plastics and various people that knew this stuff, and we put together a team. And that's how it started. And
if this is radio, if this is radio, but if as Joe shows the drawings, you should have like a hushed voice describing what the visuals are. And this next shot is this next storyboard is a shark crushing a boy on a raft and then leaping in the air. And it's a charcoal rendering.
Actor writer can't resist. Anyway, that's how it started. We built the shark at Rolly Harper in Sunland over here.
Yeah.
It was a catering place, and he had. And it went on to do
tacos, breakfast burritos, and giant sharks.
The other storyboards.
The real storyboards.
These storyboards were done with Stephen. I would sit down at lunch and rough out various shark activities, now based on the script and the whole third act. And because there were 3 sharks, one that went left to right, one right to left, because the opposite side was open so you can get to the mechanics. And then one on this incredible platform, very clever, Bob Matty, it was about 70 feet, 80 feet long, and you would float it out and it had these tanks, and it would flip over and it would sink, and it had a track on it, and it had a crane arm. And this one you could specifically land right on the stern.
The shark had hit his mark.
Yeah. So we would look at a storyboard like this, and it would take a day to get that particular shark ready for shooting. And we say, this is what we're going to shoot tomorrow. And it's obviously the platform shark, so we're going to need sterns for the boat, and we're going to need that platform shark. And this is going to be a right to left shark. So anyway, we had 300 storyboards, and they were on the production office, the copies, and it was Dick Zanuck's biggest thrill was with a red marker to say, we got this, we got that. And that's we shot the third act basically by storyboards.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there's text that describes kind of what happens, but it's just text. And in a normal movie, in a normal script, as the scenes are shot, they're lined out,
yeah.
and you go, okay, anything that doesn't have a line through it, or 3 or 4 lines for each, one for each different angle, that's how you're telling how your progress is on the script. But for the third act of Jaws, which was almost all action, very little dialogue. You could get the dialogue in 20 minutes in the looping studio, and then spend the next 3 months getting shark by shot by shark,
yeah.
shot by shark.
So that's what happened with these, and they sat.
That's the script for the third act.
Yeah,
those pictures.
and they sat in my basement, and I would give copies to friends. Greg Nicotero, who does The Walking Dead, who's a big Jaws fan. I gave copies to him years ago.
And I want to see you sign this stuff for us.
And so, but then 15 years ago, so the internet, and then we had Jaws festivals, and people, you should sell these and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I sort of dug them out of the cellar. Got really good copies made. I have somebody who handles my online thing.
Yeah, let's point out, you can actually get these if you go to joealvesmovieart.com.
Yeah.
And you can get your hands on something like this. And do you sign it for people too, or?
Well, if I'm.
Maybe.
When they buy it that way, generally at the shows, Carl and I have been doing these shows, and Carl sells his books, and I sell these sketches, and then I could endorse it, to that particular individual.
Yeah, the folks line up, and they understand that they pay a token fee for the signature, and we sign them.
Yeah,
Joe signs his.
We did 2 in this town
this
year.
I almost went to one, actually. What was it?
The
Hollywood show?
The Hollywood show was out at the Westin Hotel out by the LA. Yeah.
And then there was one at the Marriott, which was very successful for us.
Gunnar, would you mind signing something for our silent auction at the...
Of course.
December? Would you wouldn't mind?
No, absolutely.
Okay, do you mind if I just stay right there? I got a little something for you.
He's going down to
I didn't want you to see it in case you say no.
Oh my God!
I went out, I bought a chainsaw.
This is where we need the blow-by-blow
Yes.
voiceover.
I thought,
a Remington.
It's a Remington
let me tell you,
chainsaw in an orange and white box.
I want to say first, getting a chainsaw in this town is very difficult because people think you're up to the worst bit of business when you're shot. I actually found myself at a Walmart, I'm ashamed to say, and I ran up to the home section and said, "Do you sell chainsaws?" And this is about my fourth stop, and the kid looked at me, young African-American kid, like I was some crazy honky. And he's like, "You want a what?" I'm like, "I need a chainsaw for tomorrow." And I have to break it all down from the beginning. I said, we do this thing in December to help homeless kids, and I need a chainsaw. He's like, what? He's getting like half the story from me. But would you mind? Can I ask you to put this on your autograph on?
Absolutely. And just try getting one of those chainsaws into a hotel because you're trying to get it signed at the convention.
Man, I'll tell you. Well, I was a little bit kind of alarmed carrying it in the elevator.
No problem with the gun, but I mean a chainsaw. You could carry guns all
Transit
over.
security, the TSA, screeners. I mean, I guess you wouldn't take it as carry-on luggage.
Do you think you could take your chainsaw to Starbucks now? I mean,
I don't know.
They don't want guns.
Yeah.
They don't want guns, but and I got. It's funny because there was a couple of choices, but I figured we better get something kind of semi-manageable.
I have one just like that.
Do you?
Yeah, because I have lived in the hills.
I should have just swiped yours.
Yeah.
You could have signed
I have an electric one. I have a big tree limb I have to cut down.
Let me actually clean the blade here. 'Cause that's probably where you're going to sign it, Gunnar.
I think so. Is it all
yeah.
You get this request a lot, I'd imagine,
you have to
right?
oil them.
A few times. The smart ones just bring in the bar.
Well, what are you gonna?
Yeah, I know, but.
Oh, you have a silver pen?
Yeah, I've got a silver pen. I'm prepared.
You don't have a cleaning rag. Well, the T-shirt, I guess.
Hey, man,
Well, chances are it's not oily yet.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, I got it. So yeah, we have a black chainsaw Remington, and you can't really just buy chainsaws anymore. It's a big process. I guess they're used for dubious business. Not so much because of the movie, but I mean, it's so convenient. Just the grip. This thing plugs in. I mean,
yeah.
Look at that little trigger mechanism. You want to get a feel for this thing?
Sure. Do you know the story of how Tobe Hooper came up with the chainsaw for this movie?
No. How?
He was Christmas shopping. This is the story he tells. He was Christmas shopping at a Montgomery Ward's. You remember Monkey Ward's?
Yeah.
It was like a
yes,
Sears.
Sure.
And he said the store was absolutely jammed, and he started to panic, and he wanted to get out of there. And he was pushing against the crowd to get to the exit, and he looked around and realized he was in the hardware department, and they had a chainsaw display.
Oh, no.
And he had this thought: if I had one of those, I could cut my way out.
And a legend was born.
Yeah.
What you said you talked to him? Did you say you talked to him for like the first time in 35 years?
Well, yeah, I had seen him one time at a convention in New York, and we just said hello, and that was it. And then
Is that because he's in his own place, or?
Well, we're just in a different world. I mean, I live on the East Coast. I come to LA on business, but there was no reason to keep up with each other particularly,
Right.
And so then but when we did this awards evening at Universal, each of us were getting an award, and they put us together at a table. So we actually had a chance to just talk to each other. We had a great time.
Yeah.
That is exactly the right size for dismembering a person.
Careful, Gottlieb. Joe's checking it out. Joe's like, what are the specs on this thing?
They had a gas strip for it, right? You had to pull the chain.
Yeah, he had to pull the chain.
Because,
But here, go ahead and check it out, Joe.
You
Pass
need a
it down.
long cord.
Can you pass my chainsaw down to Carl so he can check it out and then see? Look, Joe's ready to fire it
No,
up.
this is good because you got to put this to start it, because you can't start it if this is not in the right position. But I use mine occasionally.
Let me bring you a Sharpie here. We're going to take a quick break. Gunnar Hansen's in studio promoting the new book, everything you need to know or want to know or whatever asked to know about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is going to be excellent with Chronicle Books. We're also with Carl Gottlieb
Just
and
like old times.
Oscar-nominated production designer Joe Alves. We'll be right back.
I feel it all around, I feel it in my bones. My life is on the line when I'm away from home. When I step out the door, the jungle is alive. I do not trust my ears, I don't believe my eyes. I will not fall down, I cannot miss the bed. Those hearts are grabbing toys, so easy to forget.
This is Phil Buckman of Fuel, and you're listening to Brigade-Radio-One.
Hey everyone, it's Ethan with Brigade-Radio-One, letting you know about the new Brigade-Radio-One YouTube channel with special content, special features, special craziness, special for you. Everything you need to know, from the live remotes, from the craziness backstage at the Canyon Club, back around to all the stuff that's being shot here at Universal, to craziness in general. Go to the YouTube channel at Brigade-Radio-One and subscribe today. You may even actually win some concert tickets.
Hey, this is Michael Lang. I've got a little self-promotion happening here. Get my new book, Musings of a Jewish Guy, available at Kindle, $2.99. And if you buy one, I'll sign it. How's that going to work out?
Hey everyone, it's Ethan with Combat Radio. You know what you need? You need the 3-disc rock and roll audio book called Nothing to Fear. Combat Radio conversations with Oingo Boingo veterans Steve Bartek, John Avila, and Johnny Vatos. An all-guns blazing, full-throttle conversation about the early days where Steve Bartek was a 14-year-old member of Strawberry Alarm Clock before joining Oingo Boingo and then going on to be the orchestrator on such movies like Batman, Avengers Age of Ultron, and The Nightmare Before Christmas. Johnny Vatos' blazingly crazy history with Tito Tarantula and many others. John Avila's tour of duty with Neil Young and his work as a producer with Real Big Fish, Save Ferris, and many others, all captured in 3 discs of Oingo Boingo craziness. Go to cdbaby.com, enter Nothing to Fear, Combat Radio Conversations with, and bam, there you go. Oingo Boingo awesomeness for all of you. Well, no, you didn't direct. John Carpenter directed Escape from New York. But where was that story where you built the set of New York out in Palmdale? And he said, well, I'm shooting.
Chock full of nuts.
And they're like, what are you shooting, John Carpenter? And he goes, I'm shooting Joe shots. Joe.
Oh, the Joe shots were the plane crash.
Oh, I thought you were talking about how you, out in the desert, you had to build like the top of the towers.
It was so great working with Carpenter because in some respects, he was like Hitchcock. You could build half the sets because he knew what he was going to shoot. And we did build. We never shot anything. We shot one thing in New York. We shot the Statue of Liberty.
Right.
And we schlepped the set that we shot here in the valley at the dam, Sepulveda Dam. We shot and we put it on a ferry boat and we went out to Liberty Island. We set it up. We did the one shot and then. But anyway, the plane crash was in St. Louis, and that was interesting. I was looking for an airplane pieces in Arizona, where you buy pieces of airplanes, and I was collecting all the. Well, I need a wing, I need this, and the guy said, there's a DC-8 that somebody wants to sell that the engines are out or something. I said, where is it? In St. Louis. Really? So I said, hold this stuff. So I went to St. Louis. I bought this airplane for $8,000, and we cut it up. And Ward Wilton was, and we snuck it into town with we didn't have permits or anything. And I laid out this, and I showed John the thing, and he said, "This is great. I'll be just shooting Joe shots." He was wonderful to work with.
The reason he said it Joe's shots is because in Escape from New York, the compositing of sets and and graphic effects and forced perspective and pretending that there's a huge space that isn't there just off camera. So if you move the camera like an inch, you see the valley or
exactly.
It was
chock full of nuts, Lexington Avenue, whatever it was. And if he panned over, there would be just cactus,
So
because we couldn't afford a stage.
Yeah. So you just build what you're going to shoot, and then you kind of have to lock down the camera because if you drift off the set, in a real set you drift off and you see more of the set, but or more of the location.
It's really Escape from Palmdale, essentially.
Escape from Palmdale.
Yeah. Because that's where you shot it, right, Palmdale?
No, right out here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So out in can't remember specifically.
Well, don't worry. We'll keep it an undisclosed location. I'm sure there's a lot of people claiming they shot Escape from New York right here.
Yeah, John,
So,
John was good. And then the next thing I did with John, which was Starman, which I was a visual consultant, and I did a lot of second unit directing on that. And then Massacre came in town looking for a job. I said, well, let's go talk to John. And then Carl just, started doing his thing. He made a lot of movies.
I loved Starman when it came out.
Yeah, so did I, actually. I really liked it. I remember seeing that in the theater as a little kid, being blown away.
One of Bridges' best performances.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was, and it was very, very subtle, kind of.
Yeah, it was beautifully done.
Great soundtrack, too.
That's the line where she's, he has to learn to drive, and she says to him, well, you know how to drive, be careful, traffic light, you know what they mean, right? He says, yes, green, go, red, stop, yellow, go very fast.
And Highway Patrol has been hearing that ever since. As
I know, that
excuses.
was a great line.
But for Joe Alves' work, and it's all pretty excellent stuff, www.joealvesmovieart.com. Get yourself some everything from Forbidden Planet to Walt Disney's Sleeping Beauty, Torn Curtain, Sugarland Express, Jaws, Jaws 2, the epic Jaws 3D, directed by Alves, Close Encounters, and Escape from New York. Why don't you come back, Joe, when you've done something? And you have some credits we can brag about. Jeez, man. It's pretty epic. But you can go there and you can get yourself some art. These are beautiful pieces. These pieces will be auctioned off at our Christmas Breakfast for Homeless Kids. They are literally works of art, and they're unbelievable. Carl, you just won an election. No small part due to Combat Radio.
Loyal listener voter.
Yes, we stormed that union. And but you, Jaws Log, Brian.
Jaws Log and the Little Blue Book for Filmmakers.
Yes.
Out there with Tony Attell. It's the essential primer for film students. If you're starting in the film business, if you're getting out of high school and starting film school, Little Blue Book is something that you need in your backpack for the next 4 years.
Brilliant. And then our friend Gunnar Nelson, writer extraordinaire, Chainsaw Chronicles in 4 days. Screening of Chainsaw tonight at the Arrow.
Absolutely.
Signing tomorrow at 2 o'clock at Dark Delicacies in Burbank.
Be there.
I would. And we, of course, have you heard before the break, we gave him a chainsaw to autograph, and he is in the process, ladies and gentlemen, of signing that chainsaw. And he's making it out to Carl Gottlieb for some strange reason. Dear Carl, a cut above the rest.
And he takes off the pen.
He's uncapped the pen.
Does the pen work?
He's approaching the chainsaw. It's on the table, and as he signs, mentally we can recreate the sound of the screams, the terror, and the bloody ripping of the saw as it tears through flesh and into a place in history.
Wow, brilliant,
Wow,
brilliant.
And he just ad-libbed that.
I hope you guys will do us the favor of coming back. And, I mean, this was a quick hour and a half for us, but hopefully you guys will...
Hour and 15 for me.
Hour and 15, yes. Carl Gottlieb's on his own timetable as usual. Alves, you're very gracious to show up. It was great to actually get you in, Gunnar. I know you're going back to the East Coast Sunday. So
Thank you. I loved it.
It was
great.
A blessing for us. I would like to encourage everyone to source out the book. It obviously is going to be an epic read, and we'll be talking more about that. And, is there anything... Oh, actually, these guys wanted to meet you. My co-host, Bumblebee from the Transformer films, wanted to meet you. And that's also Erin Fitzgerald. She's one of the cast members of Monster High. So is it okay if we do a quick meet and greet?
Absolutely.
I told them you guys were in here, and they were like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? So, and that's Steve Bloom, who does the voice of Wolverine and a bunch of other things. Erin Fitzgerald, meet some friends of ours. Oscar-nominated production designer Joe Alves. Steve Bloom.
You guys are having a party.
Yeah, we are having a party. Carl Gottlieb. And don't forget Gunnar Hansen, writer, also Leatherface in the 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
How you doing?
Yes. Now, Carl, you want to explain the scene that's happening here? You want to?
There is a frantic milling about as people meet and greet each other, embracing each other with fondness that is inappropriate for a radio station.
And don't forget Dave from Chronicle Books, everybody, who made everything happen.
Books.